Okay, we're recording. So I want to start off. We talked before, just kind of gave those big overview definitions of what leadership is, what followership is, because we very rarely actually talk about followership in the context of being a leader. Um, and also and just those kind of those big umbrella views. So what I want to talk about today is probably the most critical skill that leaders need, and that is communication. But I'm going to break that down a little bit. I'll give an overview of communication, but I really want to focus on listening because a lot of times as leaders, we're more concerned about getting our message out, about getting, making sure everybody knows our intent, everybody knows our mission, everybody knows what has to be done. So the communication flow as leaders tends to be more outward, but one aspect of communication that we often fail to see and we overlook a lot is listening. So I want to focus primarily on listening today. And of course, I'm going to start by showing you a quick video. And, oh my God, share the sound. Got to remember to share the sound. And
there's an internet meme that I really like. It's a picture of Miles Davis, and there's a quote that's attributed to Miles. The quote is, "It's not the note you play that's the wrong note. It's the note you play after that makes that note right or wrong." Now, this being a quote off the internet, I have no idea if Miles Davis ever actually said that. But Herbie Hancock tells a story that I think supports this quote. See, Herbie played in Miles's band back in the early 60s. And one night, at a gig in Germany, they were playing the song So What? And in the middle of the song, Herbie played the wrong chord. He said it was so bad, he picked his hands up off the keyboards and he put them over his ears. Miles paused for just a breath, and he played this fill of notes that made that chord right. And I like this story even better than the quote because it illustrates the relationship between Herbie and Miles and between Miles and the music. See, Herbie was really, really young, just starting out his career. Miles was well established. Miles was already a legend. Miles could have done anything he wanted to do. He could have stopped the performance, said, "Hey, take it from the top. Let's get it right this time." Could have humiliated Herbie, maybe even wrecked his early budding career. Miles didn't do that. Miles could have just kept playing the song as it was supposed to be played, as Miles had written the song to be played. But the audience knew something was wrong. The band certainly did. Miles didn't do that. Miles took what Herbie played not as a mistake, but as an opportunity to create something new and different. And that is the mark of a master of improvisation. We all improvise, all of you, every day. None of us wake up with a script each day that tells us exactly what we're going to say, exactly what we're going to do, who we're going to meet, where we're going to go. And yet, every day, my brain tries to write that script constantly. And I do improv. I've been doing live improv performances since 2011. I got my start, I went to a workshop, and we did these games and exercises, and I had a blast. And I thought, if I could learn how to do improv, then I could be funny. I was quickly disabused of this notion. You see, improv is not about being funny. Improv is about listening. It's about being present. It's about accepting. And if I can do these things, if I can listen, be present, and accept, then I can help my scene partner create a scene. And that scene will be funny, usually. Now, there are rules to improv. How weird is that? How can there be rules to something you just make up on the fly? But there are. Don't deny. Make your scene partner look good. Avoid asking questions. Use details. Create a physical environment and play within it. And for God's sake, don't try to be funny. Now, I'm not up here to give you a class in improvisational acting, although I recommend you take one. I'm here to talk about the first rule of improv. Yes, and. So yes, and is the core of improv. And at its most basic, it means that as an improviser, my job is to, yes, agree to what was just said or done on stage, then and, add more information to the scene. For instance, it's Grandma's 97th birthday this weekend. Yes, and I got her the pony she's always wanted. Most beginning improvisers are so trained, including me when I first started out. We are so trained to respond with yes and that we will literally say the words before every line. It makes for some really stilted scene conversations. But more importantly, if all we're doing is parroting, then we're not really grasping the meaning of yes and. See, the yes of yes and is not just dumb, blind acceptance. Or excuse me, not just dumb, blind agreement, it's acceptance. Y'all accept me, right? Good. It's acceptance. It's the acceptance of the reality of a scene as it's being created on stage. If my partner refers to me as their father, then I am their father. If they refer to me as their mother, then why, yes, I'm their mother. It's my responsibility to take that now truth of the scene and move it forward and not deny. Because if I deny that reality, I leave my scene partner out to hang. They now have to struggle to figure out what comes next in a scene that's already broken. If I deny the reality of someone off stage in real life, I'm creating a situation that has one of two outcomes. I either force them to reframe their reality to one that I see fit, that one I deem appropriate, or conflict. The former, forcing that reframing, that's dehumanizing. It's a power play. It's saying your reality doesn't matter, at least not as much as mine does. The latter, conflict, well, it results in the loss of understanding, even the potential for understanding. If all we're doing is shouting each other's points of view, our own realities to the other, we're not in debate, we're not in dialogue, we're just shouting. When I'm able to accept another person's reality, then I can learn. Then I can communicate. I don't have to agree with them. It's my job to open myself up, to become vulnerable, and accept that point of view. I've learned through improv to pause, to breathe, when I'm confronted by a point of view I reflexively want to deny. I allow myself the space and the grace to accept, to consider. And if I can do that, and it's scary, then I can form a bond with that person. And we do that enough, and we form a community.
Okay. First of all, I apologize for the dog barking and the baby screaming. That was my grandson and my daughter's dog. All right, so what'd you think about that video?
I think the part that stuck out the most to me, sir, was that the part where he was talking about like the accompanist or whoever playing like a wrong chord in a piece, and Miles Davis, instead of doing what he was going to do, like listened to that and made that part of the piece, even though the guy messed up.
What do you think about that in context of being a leader? Anybody can chime in.
I would have like immediately known how closely Miles was listening. Like if I were in that band and that happened and there was such a quick change like that, would be like, man, he is really listening all the time to everybody. Like that feels validating, and then something that you want to aspire to. You know, like you want to be able to listen and pivot that quickly.
There's a video somewhere on the internet where Harry Connick Jr. is playing this piano. He's doing this piano solo, and the whole audience starts clapping, but they're clapping on 1 and 3. And just out of nowhere, Harry throws in a bar of 5, and suddenly they're clapping on 2 and 4. And it was brilliant. It was just great. And so I think one of the great things that came out of that as a leader, you know, if saying that Miles Davis was a leader of that band, he takes something that someone in his band did wrong from an artist's standpoint. I mean, what's wrong? But he takes it and he makes it right, and he makes it acceptable. And as the speaker in this video said, he takes the opportunity to create something new, takes that thing that was quote unquote wrong, and as an opportunity to create something new. So, you know, I don't know how many of you, you know, ever watched Bob Ross painting his little scenes and everything, and every now and then he'll make a mistake, and he calls it a happy little accident, and just makes something artistic out of it. And as leaders, I think we struggle because we want things to go a certain way. We have a vision of how things are supposed to go, and when they don't go that way, sometimes we don't know how to handle it. And that's something I struggle with too. It's like, how do I make lemonade out of these lemons? And you work with it, right? Okay, so I'm gonna start the slide here, so you won't see me much, which is perfectly fine. Okay, so let me start the slideshow here. All right, so we're going to talk about being a listening leader. You can use, oh wait, no, I haven't shared the slide yet. Okay, there it is. You can all see the slideshow now, right? No, where's the, start that, there we go. All right. So here's what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna define communication. We're gonna discuss nonverbal communication and elements of listening. So we're gonna talk about those first things are kind of the big overview of communication, but then we're gonna delve into some of the elements of listening, talk about passive and active listening, and then a component of active listening called empathetic or empathic listening. We'll discuss listening as it pertains to servant leadership, and then we'll do some listening exercises. All right, communication, transfer of messages from one party to another. So organizations, any company or command or whatever, they're not held together by executives or by command. They're held together through the effective passing of information. So the same can be said for any relationship. Effective communication requires the sender, you as the deliverer, to send the message in a manner that allows the receiver to accurately interpret it. If leaders influence people towards a common goal, we have to be able to articulate what those goals are, the value and the manner in which those goals will be accomplished, and then be able to provide, and most importantly, accept feedback, making achieving those goals more efficient. But communication is more than just being able to speak and write eloquently. The transfer of messages also includes receiving and applying the messages from the people around us. All right, so nonverbal communication. All right, so go ahead and maybe if you want to, you can unmute. What are some examples of what is nonverbal communication, and what are some examples?
Any sort of body language or eye contact.
Great, yeah. Anything else?
Facial expressions.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? How about well, let's go ahead and get into this. So I found this statistic shocking. 7% of communication is actually just the words we use. 38% comes from the tone, cadence, and inflection of our voice. So we put these two together, and Kristen comes up to me in the morning and says, "Good morning, sir. How are you?" And I say, "I'm fine. Everything's just wonderful." So the words I used, that 7% would lead her to believe that everything is great. But the tone, cadence, and inflection of my voice might give her a different message, and that's that 38%. So what's going to weigh heavier, the words or the tone, cadence, and inflection? That was rhetorical, of course. And then 55% comes from our body language, and this is why texting and emailing can be very, very dangerous. I have young kids. Well, not young kids. I have young adult kids, and it's always surprising to me the number of serious conversations they have with their peers or their significant others through text message. My oldest daughter was going through a rough patch in her relationship, and they ultimately broke up. And she's showing me like these novel long text messages that they're sending between each other. And I told her, it's like, you guys actually have to sit down across from each other and have a conversation, because you're losing so much in so much communication in these text messages, because you're only getting 7%. So I mean, and that's the real danger, and that's why I try not to do a lot of official business through text message or emails. I either call, because then we're up to 45%, and obviously, in the environment we're in, we can't always sit across from each other. So maybe doing the video chats or the Teams or Zoom is a little bit better, or even like a video chat through your phone, FaceTiming or whatever. But this is huge, and this is something, especially those of you who are in a younger generation than me, should really take to heart, because I know that we collectively, and I'm including myself in this, rely a lot on texting and emailing for communication. All right, let's move on. Listening elements. All right, let's talk about passive listening. Can somebody give me an idea of what passive listening is before I put up a definition?
You're hearing the words, but they're just going in one ear and out the other. You're not engaging what you're hearing.
Not engaging, that's great. What else? Anybody else have anything? Maybe an example of passive listening?
I would say like when we all go to Ross Theater and they have the safety stand down and people are just kind of sitting there like zombies, and that's more of a passive kind of situation.
When we're in an all hands and the boss is droning on and on about something nobody cares about. Yeah, I get it. No, I'm kidding. I don't think you guys do that. At least I hope you don't. So, okay, passive listening is a little bit more than hearing. Listening without reacting. How many of you have been having a conversation with somebody when they're constantly checking their phone or looking at their social media or texting or something like that. And they might only be getting part of what you're saying, because their attention is divided. A lot of times the way that an example I like to give of passive listening is maybe the music you have on in your car while you're driving, or if you're getting ready for work in the morning and you have some music playing, it's just kind of going in the background. It's just kind of noise. You're kind of listening to it, and you might be listening enough to go, oh, hey, that was really cool, but you're not really in depth listening to what's going on in that music. And we do that with people all the time. All right, and all right, so let's go ahead and go to active listening. So what is active listening then?
Like when someone's talking to you and maybe like when you actually offer advice or offer feedback of any sort, it's like more two-way communication.
Yeah, when you especially the acknowledgement of the things that they're saying, right? So it's the ability to focus on the listener, the ability. No, I'm sorry. It should say to completely focus on the speaker. Sorry, that was a typo. To understand their message, and comprehend it.
Sarah, and I know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sir. So you mentioned a passive listening is, someone checking their phone or whatever. I know when I'm in a conversation and someone has their phone in their hand and then they turn it over and put it down, I'm like, okay, they're taking me seriously, this conversation seriously. Like that seems to be a really good indicator these days.
Or even just put it away.
Yeah.
Not even have it out, because even if it's out on the table, you can still hear the ding or feel the buzz, and that can be distracting in a conversation. So, actually putting it away sometimes is probably even better. But turning it over is a good step. So, and this is a quote from Stephen Covey from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. We typically seek first to be understood. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak. They're filtering everything through their own paradigms, reading their autobiography into other people's lives. Wow, reading their autobiography into other people's lives. That's pretty profound. And I think something like that really changed the way that I approach listening. So I think with the exception of Brian Taylor, I think most of you got here after I did. And when I first checked in my office, I think most everybody's been in my office except for maybe Rachel. But you notice that I've got the couch in there and I've got the 2 chairs facing each other. It wasn't like that when I got here. When you walk into the office, there was a huge, heavy wooden oak desk, and that desk is now in the admin space, where it's in the corner by the emergency exit of the admin space. But that was in the middle of the office, facing out, and there were 2 big computer monitors on the desk. And so if I'm sitting at my desk, I cannot see the door. And the person standing in the door can't see me. And if somebody wanted to come into the office and talk to me, I had to come out from around the desk and face them. And there was really no room in there for anything other than that desk. So I moved the desk out and I put that L-shaped desk back in the back corner, and then I put those couches in there so that when people come in to talk, I can step away from my desk, away from my email, away from my phone, and actually sit down and face them and have a conversation. at my previous command, my office was really, really small. So there was room for a couple of chairs in front of the desk there, but I couldn't come out from behind my desk to have a conversation with somebody. So what I would typically do is I would turn off the monitor on my computer and mute my phone. That way I wouldn't be able to see or hear any emails coming in, or turn off the phone, or you know, be distracted by the ringing phone. That way I could focus everything on that person. The biggest challenge that most people have, especially in times of conflict, are we're often preparing our response while the other person is still talking. And then what happens then is that we're missing key information. We're listening, this is called listening to respond, as Covey said. We really need to focus on listening to understand, even if we don't agree with that person. All right, so go on to active listening a little bit. And so empathic or empathetic listening. This is a component of active listening, and it focuses on the role of empathy. So you're not taking on the feelings of the other person, but you're validating them. So there are 3 stages of empathic or empathetic listening. The first is sensing. You have to be able to, sense what is the other person feeling, or what are the words behind the message. So again, going back to the example of me coming in, I'm fine, everything's just peachy. So you can sense that something isn't quite right. And so from there, you start processing and synthesizing. You synthesize that information, you combine the words with the tone and inflection, and maybe the body language if you can see me, to come up with to maybe determine what the real message is. And then maybe you respond. And how are you going to respond? When it doesn't sound like everything's peachy. Is everything all right? Is there anything I can help with? Or, that's kind of the 3 stages in process. And all of this happens really within a split second for a lot of people. But if active listening and empathy is something that you struggle with, then you think about these 3 things. Say, okay, what am I hearing here? I'm hearing these words that say everything's fine, but I'm hearing this aggressive tone. I'm seeing this body language that's tense and like an angry face maybe. So you start processing that information, and then you have to ask yourself how you're going to respond. Sometimes the response, especially, sometimes the response might be, that person needs a little space. I'm going to give them some space. Or maybe you want to engage. That comes with knowing your people. And does that person just need a couple of minutes to get a breath and they'll be fine? Or is this going to turn into a volatile situation that we need to try to lower the temperature? Okay, so we talked a little bit last time about servant leadership. And listening is one of the top 3 foundational tenets of servant leadership. Remember, there were 10 tenets, 10 principles of servant leadership. And the top 3 are empathy, listening, and healing. And it doesn't really matter what research you go to about servant leadership. The top 3 the top 3 characteristics of a servant leader are always empathy, listening, and healing. So here's what Peter Northouse says about listening and servant leadership. Servant leaders communicate by listening first. They recognize that listening is a learned discipline that involves hearing and being receptive to what others say. Through listening, servant leaders acknowledge the viewpoint of followers and validate these perspectives. Notice that it does not say agree with, but it validates their perspectives. So this definition has a lot in it. So we need to kind of unpack this some. So servant leaders communicate by listening first. Remember that communication isn't just about the person speaking. It's about receiving the information back from the listener to ensure that your message has been received. All right, so listen first before speaking to your bosses so that you understand their intent and their vision. If there are specific instructions or tasks, that make sure you know what those tasks are before articulating your own agenda. You want to listen to your peers. Sometimes they've overcome challenges or struggles that you are currently facing or you will face. And you can use them as an opportunity to learn maybe from their mistakes or learn what worked for them in the struggles that you have. And they also may have some resources that can help you get through some of the things that you're dealing with. To your team, some of you are in leadership positions where you are responsible for the people around you. So what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? What do they have the resources that they need in order to do their jobs? Are they struggling with something outside of work like divorce or illness or financial distress? These are things that will distract them from the task at hand. And when you listen to your team, you know best how to employ them according to their strengths, areas where they want to develop and hone their skills, and the resources that they'll need to do their jobs. And then listen to your family. And really, this one should be number one. Unfortunately, it isn't in a lot of cases. How many of us have gotten so caught up in our day-to-day grind that we completely neglect the needs of our spouses, of our children? And I'm raising my hand here. I don't think you can see me, but I'm raising my hand because I'm guilty of that. So what's stressing your spouse? Are you meeting your spouse's needs physically, emotionally, spiritually? And I know some of you aren't married, but you have people in your lives that you care about. At least, yeah, I'm pretty sure you do anyway. How about your kids? How are your kids doing in extracurricular activities? And especially now, for those of us who have kids in school, and they're probably struggling with the virtual aspect of it, or not being with their friends, or those kinds of things, their relationships. So you guys have heard me talk about, and so let me back up a second. So really, your family, your relationships are the areas where listening is going to benefit you the most. And I think that is the most important thing, because all of us are going to leave this job one day, right? And I don't know, some of you have probably heard me say this. There's going to be a day when you and the Navy get a divorce, and it's either going to be by your choice or it's going to be by someone else's choice. But you're going to separate, and when you step off the brow onto that pier for the last time, the most important thing on that day is your family. So don't ignore them. Make sure you're attending to their needs. All right, so let's go on. The next part, listening is a learned discipline. As I told you before, our default setting is to be heard. We want to be heard and understood. And so we need to kind of suppress that tendency and focus on developing the listening skill. It's like any muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets. Most of the time, most of the time the messages we need to interpret are fairly simple. So maybe my spouse, maybe my wife says, hey, can you pick up some milk on your way home from work? So as I'm processing the information, we're out of milk. I drive by the grocery store on my way home. I can pick some up. But some of these messages, some of these things can be a bit more complicated. If someone says, I'm tired, then you got to start asking a few questions. Did you get enough sleep? Are you tired of your job? Are you tired of your relationship? Are you tired of your coworkers? That kind of statement needs you to look at maybe some of the nonverbal cues and maybe ask a few more questions. But then you have to actually listen and be receptive. This is the next part of this definition. Be receptive to what others have to say. This can be really, really difficult when we're in a conflict or if somebody is telling us something that we don't want to hear. So yeah, you've heard me say this before probably. No one wakes up in the morning with the goal of failing, right? But we're human. We're going to screw things up, and sometimes we don't even know that we're screwing up. So you know, we make mistakes, and sometimes we can get so consumed with our ambition and our selfishness that we lose sight of what the right thing is. Most like moral failures that people have are a slow fade. They're a series of seemingly bad decisions that lead up to a big bad decision. So in this time, we have to be willing to listen when other people are trying to hold us accountable. Ask yourself a question. If you're a little bit lower in the hierarchy, would you rather have one of your peers or maybe even somebody below you in the hierarchy tell you when you're screwing up? Or would you rather have me or the Master Chief tell you when you're screwing up? Because I can tell you this, I would much rather have Seaman DeBost come up and tell me, I'm not sure that this is the right decision, than get a phone call from the Admiral saying, Lieutenant Hill, I'd like to see you in my office, please. Just saying, I would much rather have one of you guys put me on the right track than have the Admiral do it. So the next part of this definition that I want to unpack is acknowledge the viewpoint of others and validate their perspective. Okay, so this is the yes and part that the speaker in the YouTube video was talking about. So we're not necessarily agreeing with the person, but we're validating their perspective. So if someone on your team comes up and says, oh, my cat is so sick, and I'm so upset because she's old, I've had her for 15 years and I think I'm gonna have to put her down and I'm so upset about this. And maybe you really don't give a rip about cats. You're not an animal lover, you're certainly not, maybe not a cat person or whatever. So your first thought might be, wow, okay, well, here's what we got to do today. Here are our tasks that we have to do. So deal with your cat on your own time. What you need to remember as an empathetic listener, as an empathic listener, is that is something that is really, really important to that person. That cat is a member of that person's family and has been with him or her for 15 years, and they're really upset about this. So I'm not saying that as a leader, you should do an all stop for the organization so that this person can go take care of their cat. Maybe you do. Maybe that is the right thing to do for that situation. But maybe you take a minute and talk to that person and listen. So there was a situation, well, let's see here. There was a situation I had a few years ago when I was, and it's kind of humorous, but it's also kind of tragic. I was a chief, and I was working at the School of Music, and I had just finished with a morning run, and I was in the locker room, coming out of the shower. I was only wearing a towel at the time, and I saw one of my coworkers in there getting ready for work, and I said, "Hey man, how's it going?" And he burst into tears. He just immediately started crying, and he said, I think my marriage is over." So we sat down, and I just listened to him, and we were kind of in this really deep conversation, and then it occurred to me that the only thing I was wearing was a towel. but those are the times when you've got to really take the time to listen to the people around you. I made sure that he got to a chaplain, and that he and his spouse were able to get into some counseling and some therapy. But that moment, it was what I did at that moment, I think made a difference for that person. Like, well, let's talk about it after I get some clothes on. Go ahead and just stand there and cry while, I don't know what the right thing to do was, but I felt like the right thing to do in the moment was to just listen to him. Okay, so talk about that. Oh yeah, I haven't been clicking through these like I said I was going to. Okay. So we're gonna do some listening exercises. So I want you to take a look at these scenarios. There are 5 of them, and what I'd like to have happen is for someone to pick a scenario and to volunteer, and for someone to volunteer to describe one of these things, and someone to be a listener. So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen for a second so that I can see who's volunteering for what. Okay, so if you want to use like the raise your hand function to volunteer, or use the chat box. Don't everyone volunteer at once.
Sir,
Okay, I got Kristen. Kristen, what did you want to volunteer for? To be a listener or to describe something?
Either one, sir. I have a holiday tradition I can share, or I'm happy to listen also.
Okay, so I tell you what. So Mallory, you're gonna be the listener for this one, and here's what you do. Kristen is going to describe a holiday tradition. You're going to ensure that you understand everything that she said. And the way that you ensure everything that she said, or your perception of what she said, is to repeat as much of it back to her as you can remember. Okay? All right, go ahead, Kristen.
So I'm 3/4 Danish. So we have a Danish holiday tradition in my family where on Christmas Eve, we have what's called a nut present. And usually you hide an almond in the mashed potatoes. I don't know why, but my mom started doing it in the dinner rolls. And my sister and I had figured out to look at all the dinner rolls and figure out which one had the knife slice in it, because that was the roll that had the almond. And we really wanted that because whoever gets the almond gets to open the first present of Christmas on Christmas Eve, which is, it's a silly present. So it's kind of tricky to shop for because it has to appeal to everybody. So you've got grandparents, great grandparents, and little kids and everyone in between. So it's usually a little silly gift. But so anyway, my mom had to start slicing each dinner roll. So put a little jab into it so that my sister and I couldn't tell which one had the almond. So anyway, that's my nut present holiday tradition.
Wow, first off, like that sounds really cool. It's a really good tradition. And it's also cool that you're like 3/4 Danish, you said. But like the nut almond tradition, like where you have to hide the nut and everybody's looking for it in like the bread, like different foods and stuff, and then like the first person that finds it gets to like open up a gift on Christmas Eve, I believe is what you said. And like having like a gift that applies to everybody, so it can be kind of hard to shop for it, but finding something silly that a lot of people can relate to. And I don't know, it just sounds like a really cool Christmas tradition to me.
Did she hit all the salient points there, Kristen?
I think so, yeah.
Or did she miss anything? But I guess not necessarily that she missed anything. Did she understand what you said?
Yes, I do feel like she did.
Okay. Does anyone want to do something else? I actually have one I'd like to share if somebody would like to be my listener. I see Whitney's hand up. Whitney, do you want to be my listener or do you want to share something?
Either one, sir. I can be your listener.
Okay. So the one I'm going to go with was oh, it's not on there. Oh, the childhood memory. So this Sunday is the 1st, right? Or is it Monday? Monday's the 1st, I think. Anyway, February 1st is the 1-year anniversary of my father passing. So, you know, I've been seeing a lot of memory things pop up on my social media, and it's had me thinking a lot about my dad. And he and I used to go fishing a lot when I was a kid, because he worked third shift. He was a police dispatcher, a 911 dispatcher, and he worked third shift. So he usually slept during the days, but on his days off, he and I would go fishing. There was one particular day that he and we spent the entire day together, and I think I had to have only been about 10 years old, maybe. And we dropped my mom off at work, and then we went fishing. And then we went to, we went to Burger King, and I had my first Whopper. And it was really interesting because he remembered that I had seen a Burger King commercial and commented that I'd never had a Whopper before. So he kind of filed that away in his mind. And when we went to lunch, I got my first Whopper, and it was kind of a cool experience. And then we went to an afternoon movie, and then we, by the time the movie was over, we were picking my mom up from work. So he and I spent the entire day together, and it was just a very cool experience, and probably one of my most cherished memories as a kid of my dad. That's it.
That's a good memory. I'm assuming third shift is like the graveyard.
Yes. He went to work I think he went to work at midnight and got off at 8 in the morning.
Yeah. So I can imagine having like a whole day of just you and your dad is cool anyway. Like when you're a kid, of like, I'm, me and my dad. But especially if often he's having to sleep when you're up, to be sleeping for work, that I'm sure that's even more special. And I love those moments where, like you were saying, he noticed something you liked and tucked it away to remember for later. I'm sure that was really the whopper. That was the little small but special. Makes you feel important as a kid. That's a great memory.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else have anything that they want to share? We can move on.
Oh, I've also got another dad one, a dad and a holiday tradition rolled into
Okay.
one.
Does anyone else want to be a listener, or I can do it too. It's not a big deal. All right, go ahead, Whitney. I'll be your listener.
Sure. So when I was little, my dad would always, every Christmas Eve, my dad's mom would stay the night with us, and she would always when I was real little, she would like sleep with me, and I would cuddle up with my grandma, and my dad would always get up onto the roof, and pretend to be Santa Claus, and he would stomp over the roof over my brother's room and then over mine, and then he had this long like leather strap that had all these big sleigh bells on it, and so he would shake the sleigh bells and he would be stomping around and ho ho hoing, and then I'd be in there, and if I dozed off, my grandma would make sure to wake me up and be like, what's going on, who is that? And there was one Christmas where we go outside and we're running around in the front yard doing whatever, and one of those sleigh bells had fallen off of the strap, and my dad didn't realize, and so we see this sleigh bell sitting in the yard, and I like at that point my brother knew that Santa wasn't real. Spoiler alert, sorry. But I but I still believed. I was still pretty young, and so I still believed. I found that sleigh bell and like lost my mind that like here I had this little sleigh bell of Santa's and just held on to it for the longest time. And he has my dad has passed away quite a while ago. But I still, every Christmas Eve, I still find myself feeling like staring at the ceiling and it not feeling right. Like, well, I have to stay awake until I hear the stomping on the roof, because that's what feels, right, even though obviously I know that's not going to happen. So,
What a fantastic memory.
yeah.
So, I guess I'm thinking about my own grandmother and how much, I missed her, and how special it had to have been to be able to snuggle up with her and just kind of share the bed with her when you were little. But the fact that she would wake you up so that you could hear Santa Claus on the roof and hear the sleigh bells and stuff, that was very cool, not just for you but for her too, and to kind of see that that light in your eyes as a child. But I was thinking about, and I shouldn't have been doing this. I shouldn't have been thinking about something else while you were talking. But have you seen the Polar Express?
Oh, I've not actually. The animated with Tom Hanks as a conductor.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you have to see the Polar Express because, well, yes. I think it's important for you to watch the Polar Express, especially with that memory that you have specifically. I think you're gonna love that, and it's gonna be I think it'll end up being a very special movie for you. But you might want to have some tissue.
Got it.
So I
Yeah.
won't spoil it. Okay, so let me go here. Oops. All right. So that's really all I have. The one thing that I want to stress to you, and we did these listening exercises, and I tried to keep them all kind of positive experiences, so that we could, you could kind of synthesize the information that people were saying and then bring it back. These skills are critical, especially in times of conflict. If you're having a conflict with one of your coworkers or with someone you're in a relationship with, whether it's a spouse or another family member or something, it is so important to listen to understand. Now, understanding doesn't mean that you agree with that person. It means that you're validating their feelings, validating what they have to say. That must be very frustrating. That you sound frustrated that you feel like I insulted you by saying this thing. Right? I mean, you're validating your feelings. You're not necessarily agreeing that you did something wrong. Maybe you don't think you did something wrong, but it's important that you see that it's important to that person. Then you can start having a discussion. Okay? And make sure that, again, you are validating, and hopefully when you validate that person, they will see what you're doing and validate your position. But even if they don't, now you have this training, now you have these skills, and you also have the mental capacity and the emotional intelligence. Remember, I talked about emotional intelligence before. You have the emotional intelligence to be able to lower the temperature, lower the emotional temperature of the room, so that you can have a conversation. And as that temperature goes up from the other person, your job is to bring it down. There are times when you want to raise the temperature. So, and we can maybe do another training on like emotional intelligence and stuff, but there are times when it's appropriate to raise the emotional temperature. Like if we're on a team and we're getting ready to go to a performance. And as the leader, I want to get you guys excited. I want to get you jacked up for this performance, that I know you can do it. We've gone through these rehearsals. You guys have had great rehearsals. We've had some challenges, but you know what? I've seen what you can do, and this is going to be a great performance. And I think we're going to be it's going to be fantastic. That's when I want to raise the emotional. But usually when people are angry or frustrated or sad or scared or anxious or whatever, you want to try and lower it. You want to try and calm things down. And the last thing I'll say about that is, how many of you, of course, this is an old movie now. I say it's an old movie, but it's one of my favorites, The Hunt for Red October. Anyone? No? Okay, yeah, us older guys have seen it. So The Hunt for Red October is based on a Tom Clancy book. Brian, I see your hand. And there's one scene where this enemy submarine fired a torpedo and it's heading right for him. And the captain goes, right full rudder, all ahead flank. Just very calm. Like everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to die. And the captain goes, right full rudder, all ahead, 50 degrees down. And it just, and everyone was just calm, and they executed the moves, and everything was great. Brian, what you got?
Oh, I was just acknowledging that I've seen Hunt for Red. I
Okay.
don't remember that scene, but I've seen it and read the book.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody have any questions about anything that we've talked about today? Anything that I've presented that you're curious about? Want me to expand on?
I have more of a comment, if I might.
Great.
I just want to thank you guys, the servicemen and women, for what you guys do. I know the Navy's synonymous with big boats with big guns, but music's also a fantastic weapon. So I want to thank you and all the other sailors. But I just wanted to make a comment quickly. I worked with somebody for 4 years, or so. And I was able to get messages, because it's funny. I was able to get this person's messages from something that happened, early in his early in that person's career, that I never understood, So for instance, basically that person was made to do everything because of a certain situation. So I can imagine, and now finally, after about 2 or 3 years, I was able to pick something out and understand, and it took us that long from, you know, because I was closed, I had a closed loop, and I wasn't able to get that message. So as that happened years ago, that's where he was coming from. And so I was able to understand that this person just wanted, hey, some other things done. That I also was able to understand, hey, I need to, you know, although not directly in leadership at this moment, how I could get other things done, and also say, hey, because that was how it was done before. You know, you had to do everything in this case. I'm not going to go into it, but now I'm not going to do it all. So we have to work together. So it took me that long just to figure that out because I couldn't listen. So, and that's my responsibility. So I just wanted to make a comment real quick and then say thank you guys.
Thanks, Nate. I appreciate you being on the call with us. All right, anybody else have any questions or anything before we sign off? All right, thanks everybody for joining. We'll do this again and maybe the next one. And again,
I was just thinking how
go ahead, Kristen.
with
Sorry.
the polarization.
Yeah, Kristen, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I think my internet was being funny, but I was just thinking with all the polarization in our country right now, we probably all know people on different ends of the spectrum from where we are politically, and it's maybe a great opportunity to practice some of these listening skills with validating and not having to agree, and really listening to somebody who potentially believes something that makes you really angry, but maybe they're a friend or family member and you love them. And I just think it could be such an important part of healing for our country right now if we can just be able to listen to our friends and family who are so different.
Yeah, I agree. If anybody has any topics, any leadership topics that they'd like to cover or like to see me cover, or if you want to lead one of these trainings, you are more than welcome to do so. And I'll probably do this again in a couple of weeks. I'm kind of rolling around a couple of different topics that I want to do at some point. I'm thinking change management, because holy cow, we're always in a state of change and flux. Another one is building trust, strategic planning. Some of those things are critical when it comes to being a leader, and even I'm kind of that middle management level as far as the Navy's concerned, but even at your levels, the work center levels, strategic planning, change management, building trust are all important at every level. So those are kind of the ones that I'm kind of rolling around. But if there's a topic that you want to see covered, conflict resolution, holy cow, we just started a little bit of that. Conflict resolution is a good one too. So we'll do this every couple of weeks, and then I'm glad you're here. And if again, let me know how I'm doing. If there's anything I can do to improve what I'm doing, please let me know. And I won't beat you up too bad on it. I'm kidding. All right, you guys have a great day. Okay. Bye now.